I was like running a business and making a lot of money, and I'm like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, like I know what I'm doing, I'm gonna go to Stanford, and turns out I didn't know anything. Don't spend millions of dollars just buying ads, spend millions of dollars making.
Erik, thanks for taking the time to join. I'm excited for this one. Before we get into how you built chess.com into a $100 million business, I want to start this conversation with your early context. What would be the earliest piece of context that I would have to know about you to understand the person sitting in front of me today and all that he's accomplished?
Okay, well, thanks for having me first. Context about me is that I have, from a very young age, been a very scrappy, doer. I could not be stopped in terms of just creative ways to go out and figure out how to do a business. And that includes being 8 years old and in my neighborhood. I kind of knew where the high school kids drank beer on the weekends, and I would go there on Monday after school and I would collect the cans into garbage bags and then have my mom drive me to the grocery store, and I'd recycle those and make, $1.15, and I would feel amazing about it. That's just the very first story of just many, many, many business type activities that I did. It's just inside of me, and my dad is the same way. That's some context about me.
You also sold candy bars in middle school and did a ton of these little entrepreneurship experiments. Why do you think it's inside of you?
So my dad's dad was an immigrant to the U.S. from the Netherlands, escaped kind of after the war, was an artist and kind of a crafty person. My grandpa, my opa, as we call him, very much a resourceful person, had to be during the war, came to America, moved into a chicken coop as his first home, converted from a chicken coop into a house, and then just was like scrappy. And my dad was, came at age 4 and 5 and, I think had some of that immigrant chip and some of that immigrant hustle to make things happen, and tried many different businesses. Frankly, none of his businesses succeeded outside of his law career, which he's had a very good law career and been very successful there. But he was always doing something. So maybe it's because I'm part Dutch, maybe because it's part immigrant, maybe it's DNA, but it's definitely inside of me.
And for those early businesses, you mentioned your dad's businesses didn't really do so well. Were you making any money from your early businesses?
Yeah, I was. If I wanted something, my dad was really awesome in that he had a sticky note on his bathroom mirror. I remember seeing it that said that that the sons of the rich are often poor, because what happens is people don't learn how to work hard and they get everything handed to them. And so my dad knew, because he was an estate planning attorney, he'd seen so many families that had money and saw the children who grew up in that circumstance. And again, this isn't true always, but there's a lot of people who get silver spooned and do very well. And there's a lot of people who get everything and have generational wealth. So I'm not saying this is held true, but he had the fear that his own success would lead to his kids not being, not learning how to work hard. And so if I wanted a remote control car, which I did, it wasn't handed to me. I had to go door to door selling stationery from the back of Boys Life magazine, making $2 a sale, to save up $200 to buy the remote control car I wanted. I had to go to my neighbor and mow lawns for, $5 an hour to get what I wanted. He didn't hand us things. We didn't have we didn't have yard workers. We had a nice big yard, then we had to do our own chores. So it wasn't handed to me, and that was very intentional by him, is to not make life easy for us.
So I want to connect the dots, but before we get to chess.com and some of the businesses you're running today, previously, but before founding chess.com, you thought business school and law school was pretty important, that it could change your life. But in fact, it changed your life in a way you didn't expect. You were rejected from every business school and law school you applied to. How did that impact you?
Well, first of all, it was a tough time to be applying to business school and law school. It was, in 2001, the dot-com bubble, meltdown, all that stuff. And it's a record time for people to be applying to schools. So, but I'm super glad I got rejected. It was great. I had people in my ear telling me, oh, if you want to be successful, you have to do this schooling or you have to do this thing. And I grew up in a great area, and those were my mentors, people who were doctors, people who were lawyers, people who had done business. And, getting a great education was a key part of that in their mind. So they told me that. And I actually don't think that's necessarily true at all. Having gone through that process, I think it can be true and it can work out. But I think some of the most successful people we've seen, it was really more about their hustle and their drive and their own creativity than the school that they went to. But I was told differently, have a great career, do this, this is the path, go do this. And I did end up going to Stanford Business School. And I will say, amazing experience, met incredible people. The connections have been phenomenal. But the first time around, I was rejected everywhere in 2001. And then was like, well, okay, now I got to go do something, and started my own companies. And then, 4 years later, did reapply because I wasn't actually feeling super happy and satisfied at the time. And I did get in later, but only after kind of cutting my chops on doing an actual business.
What companies were you running after you were rejected from business school?
So one was called Schoolhouse Chess. I did that for a while. I was teaching chess to kids in after schools, kind of on a larger scale. We had about over 100 schools. Lots of kids involved. A lot of people are like, oh, I'll be a chess coach, and they get individual students. That's step one, is you have individual students. That's great. You can make a great living and be very happy doing that. Step two is, I'm going to teach multiple students in a class or a school, and I'm going to do a bigger program where I teach more people at a time. Okay, you can make maybe a little more money doing that. Then you're like, oh, I'll do a couple of those, and I can personally drive on Mondays here and Tuesdays there, and that you can do more. To scale that, you have to then set up a system. And so I set up a system, and I was hiring other people to go do that. They were getting $15, $20 an hour as college students. And then I was running the business and scaling the business. So I quickly understood leveraging, systems and operations to kind of scale and grow something, and hiring great people to, who wanted to be involved to go do the work. So that was able to raise it. The second business I did was called Wholesale Chess, where I was importing chess equipment from overseas, which was scary to do back then. It's a lot easier, a lot more confident now. But, back in, 2001, wiring $50,000 over to China using a fax machine was a different world. It was pretty scary. But I did that, and I set up a warehouse, built our website because there was no Shopify. We had to custom build an entire e-commerce platform, and, set up our business. There were much higher barriers to entry for business back then. And it was different. And now it's actually easier to start a business in some ways and to test an idea. There's so many platforms. There's so many, different tools. There's so many different, people who are doing it and supporting it. But, 20 plus years ago, starting your own business was a different thing. So anyway, I did it twice. I succeeded twice. And I guess the Stanford admissions office was like, this weirdo did 2 chess businesses, has never had a real job. Let's get him into our class and see what happens. So that's probably how that happened.
So you mentioned you were running 2 businesses, both of which were successful. I feel like entrepreneurship is often glamorized a lot, that profession. Why were you unhappy?
I think entrepreneurship is way over glamorized. It can be so miserable. I don't know very many super happy entrepreneurs. And they don't want to talk about it. And they talk about it with each other. Because when you're CEO or running a company, everyone else is like, oh, that's awesome. And if you're like, actually, it's not, you kind of sound like it doesn't sound great. It doesn't come off well. But that's why founders get together and they just commiserate. Anyway, there's something about the ups and downs that can be hard. But I'll just say it this way. If your business is growing super fast, it's miserable because everything seems like it's going well, but you're not prepared. You don't have the team. You're stressed out of your mind. It's like your business is going up super fast, and like you can't deal with it. It's just overwhelming. It's all encompassing, and like it's very hard to handle growth. So growth can feel miserable, and you're like, "Where's my life? What is going on?" It feels scary. What if it goes down? So growth is hard. If your business is flat, that sucks because you're always thinking, "How do I grow?" And if your business is going down, that sucks because your business is not doing well and you're dealing with all those problems. So whether your business is going up, whether your business is flat, whether your business is going down, all you have is problems. That's all you're doing is dealing with problems. And you're dealing with people problems, and you're dealing with, external factors. You're dealing all sorts of things. So entrepreneurship is just problems. Do you like problems? Be an entrepreneur. You want to not have problems in your life? Go get a great job. So that's...
Even with chess.com, you guys are $100+ million revenue business now. Do you feel that same way?
Yeah, all I have is problems, man. It's true. Like, of course, yeah. And people are like, oh, you got $100 million. Everything's easy. Well, guess what? Costs are rising all the time. Like, your vendors are raising their prices, and then you're like, you raise your prices on your community, and your community's like, oh, now you're raising prices on us. And you're like, oh, your healthcare costs are going up, and the cost of inflation's going up, and then, and then you got competitors coming at you, and then you've got this crisis, and then you've got this important person who's, out for some reason. Or I'm just going to be honest, like entrepreneurship is problem management, and it's judgment, and it's judgment, and it's vision, and it's resources, but it's problems. I mean, how would you feel? Sure, you have a $100 million company, and now you wake up one morning, and then and everyone's texting you saying, hey, what are you going to do? You just got sued for $100 million. Like, that's a problem, Sure, it's an opportunity, but it's also a problem. So it's a bit glamorized, and you're just going kind of from crisis to crisis at times. Meanwhile, you have a whole bunch of other people looking at you just like, well, I guess, our CEO, our founder, is like handling all the problems. That's great. And then they're all trusting you. And then you're looking back at them and like, wow, I have all this, like everyone's trusting me to do this. That's a lot of pressure. So it can definitely lead to like a mental health, problems for founders and entrepreneurs. And so anyway.
Yeah, it reminds me of the story of Bobby Brennigan. We had him on the show. His business, he was selling textbooks. He was doing about maybe somewhere in the 7 figures or 8 figures in revenue a year, but the profit margins on that were super slim. So when he got sued by 4 of the biggest textbook publishers in the world, he was super stressed. He didn't have the money to account for that. And one day he was driving on the highway and he just blacked out, and he found himself on the side of the road surrounded by paramedics. He was like, what happened? And that's when he realized something had to change. I mean, if you could give yourself one piece of advice during that time, what would you say?
The advice I give here is not necessarily the advice people like to hear, but I think there's 3 things that you have to have a balance, because entrepreneurship and the weight of that is so heavy. You need some other things on the other side of the scale. The things that have worked well for me: great relationships. I have an amazing wife and children and family. I have great friends, and that helps me stay balanced. The other is I take care of my health above all. I get sleep. I exercise every day. I eat well, because I have to be in best performance to do that. And thirdly is I do have hobbies and other things that I can do so that I can find peace and quiet. I can't be doing email and Slack and problems while I'm playing pickleball. So I'm happy to be playing pickleball where I can't think about that and I can focus on something else and my brain can reset. And so relationships and health and hobbies balance that out for me and keep me able to then, when it's work time, be maximum hard focused on solving problems and kicking ass. Got it.
So you apply to Stanford Business School, you get in, but when you were applying, what were some of the key things that you wanted to get out of an MBA at the time?
I just needed a change, honestly. And my wife was like, you need to do something different. Our business was flat. It was operating. It was kind of boring at the time. I was playing too many video games. I wasn't taking care of my health. And I needed a big reset. And she could see this in me. And she's always been a little out, ahead, seeing the right ways. And she's like, you got to go to business school. I'm going to help you write your essays, 'cause she's an amazing writer. And I think that's best for our family. And I think this is your last chance to use that really lucky good GMAT score you got coming out of college. This is your last year. Go for it. I was like, all right, let's do it. And I think she could see the life that we wanted and where we wanted to go. And she kind of nudged me that way really helpfully. And we applied in some ways, and I got in, and then we got to go. And I will say I went there with a fair amount of ego. I'm a pretty different person than when I first got there, because I didn't have a lot of other people or peers who were doing similar things. Like, if people were in entry-level jobs, kind of out of college, and my peer group was kind of like a lot of entry-level jobs or people still in school. And I was like running a business and making a lot of money, and I'm like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go to Stanford. I don't know what I'm going to learn there. I'm already an entrepreneur. And turns out I didn't know anything, and I had so much to learn from a business point of view, from an interpersonal point of view, from a cultural point of view, how to be a good leader. And I am an open person, so I didn't know what I didn't know. But when I got there, I did pretty immediately realize I have so much to learn here, and I opened myself up to that.
What do you think is the biggest thing you learned?
Wow, that's a huge question. I think what I realized is that building a company is the bringing together an orchestration of so many different elements, and that you're really, like in an orchestra and a conductor, you are moving people together into creating something. And in order to do that, there's many different leadership styles that can work. But you have to have a familiarity with all the different pieces and how they can work together. And you have to put the best people in the seats. And you have to get the right resources in order to do that. And then you have to guide and lead. There are a lot of different types of leaders. You can have people who are sales leaders. You can have people who are mission and culture leaders. You can have people who are product leaders. You can have technology founders. There's all sorts of things that you can do. You can have some people who have a ruthless mission and are kind of jerks to work for, but they pay people a lot of money and attract people to a mission and a talent. That can work. The Elon Musks can do the thing. That can happen. But where I went to business school, and my personal life philosophy was on the other side, which was like, how do you create an amazing culture that people want to be a part of, and then do great things together and have a mission and do that? And that is what I learned. And I have executed on that. I would say our company culture is arguably like one of our greatest assets, and very few people ever leave our company because it's such a great place to work, and we've created something awesome, and we have a great mission. And chess is such a great game. I mean, it's just like, who doesn't want to be a part of it? So all of that. But I did learn a lot there, and I learned a lot of humility, and I learned how to be a servant leader, where I'm there to serve. Yes, I'm leading. Yes, I'm strategically helping. Yes, I'm tactically strong to help in all the different areas and touching the product and things. But I'm also there to serve people and show them how much I love them, how much I support them, and that we're all going and doing this mission together.
The culture aspect of it is actually pretty fascinating to me, because you're a pretty big business now, but I think almost your entire team is completely remote. How have you been able to build such a strong culture remotely?
I would flip the question and say, how were we able to build a remote company is because of our culture. It's not how did we build our culture inside of a remote company. Does that make sense? It was our culture that allowed us to be a great remote company. And so that's what we started with and focused on. Mission driven, no assholes. Like, focus on what's important. Getting people there who wanted to be a part of that mission. Everybody who joins chess.com knows from the very first interview that this is not their highest paying job. If you want your highest paying job, go somewhere else. Go somewhere where you probably don't have the great culture. You probably aren't doing an awesome mission. So we attract people who are like, I want to be a part of this. I want to do this. I'm making enough money to be happy and live. I could make more money somewhere else. I probably won't enjoy it, but I could. So we don't have those people coming in to our culture who are like just focused on their own personal advancement and own personal fight. We just don't attract those people. They don't apply. They don't get through the interview process, or if they do, they don't stick around. And so we have a culture of like, hey, we are on a mission together, and it's a very similar and kind of like-minded thing. And then we use good practices. I mean, we're always talking. We don't talk about business metrics. We probably need to more. But when we have our managers meeting like today, our topic was giving people the benefit of the doubt and how important of a tool that is when you're running a company, and especially a remote company where when someone types something, you can't see their face. You don't know the meaning of what they're saying. All you see is words, and you can take words in a negative context, a sarcastic context, or a serious and sincere context. So you have a choice, and we talked about that. That was our managers meeting today. So that's our culture. We're constantly refining and pushing on that culture, and that's what we focus on. Maybe, and maybe, like I said, we should sometimes do a little bit more data and metric stuff, but our culture is super important to us.
I mean, we've been talking about chess.com for a little bit. I want to paint the picture here and take a step back. What's the founding story behind chess.com? How did you come up with the idea, and why did you decide to start the business?
So we were doing wholesale chess at the time. And when you do a search on Google, in the past, there was like very clear ads, and then there was like the natural search results. And we were constantly battling over being the first for the natural search results, SEO, search engine optimization. We want to be number one for chess boards, chess pieces, chess sets, chess clocks. There was kind of competition between the top sites. And we were also, though, the Google ads at the top were getting a lot of clicks, so we were all spending money. So here was the top 5 competing chess vendors at the time selling the exact same product, and we were nickel and diming each other down on price, meanwhile spending more and more money to get clicks to our site, and our margins were evaporating. And I'm like, this is insane. We're selling a commodity item, trying to compete on price, and trying to outbid each other to get customers. This is going to break and fail. And yes, we eventually had the most market share, and we had the best service and the best website and best brand and all the different things, but we still felt like we were in a race to the bottom. And I said, look, at the time, MySpace was very popular and growing. And I was like, look, why don't we build a community for chess players? Then they'll come and they'll chat about chess and watch chess and play chess and learn chess and do chess stuff. And they'll come for that reason. Then we can have ads that don't cost anything. And then they'll buy the chess equipment, and we can have a better chess selling business because of that. That was the initial idea behind chess.com, was to build a community and then sell chess equipment. Well, kind of while this was percolating, I got into Stanford Business School, as you said, and I was like, I can't keep running this business. I have to sell this business. And so I sold the business, but I kept the domain name and the vision. And while I was at business school, I built all the wireframes and started to then work with my co-founder, Jay. He was the technical side, and the two of us I'd do school during the day, and until 3 a.m., I was staying up and building chess.com with Jay. And it was a grind. Also, I had 2 or 3 kids at the time. Like, I was a pretty busy person, not taking care of myself in some ways, which that's okay. It was a period of investment. But while I graduated from that, so I'd sold the chess equipment business, built chess.com. I had some job offers at Facebook and Palantir and YouTube and Mint and other kinds of things. But I was like, I'm just going to try this chess thing. And everyone was like, you're crazy. I was like, maybe I'll go get a job later, but I'm just going to see this out. And as I graduated, we started chess.com, and I had some money from having sold the other companies, and the rest is history.
I mean, community platforms are extremely difficult to build and get engagement on there and retention. How did you get those first 100,000 people in chess.com's community?
Back in the day, a community was a profile and some forums and some content. It was a simpler world. I mean, social media was different back then. It really meant something else. So we built those things, and then there used to be more kind of like little tiny pockets. Maybe now it's like subreddits, but before, all of those were just, or Discord servers or whatever. Those were all just different domain names. One would be a place for talking about cars. Then you'd go to, golf.com and you'd talk about golf, and you'd go to, so it was different at the time. And chess.com was, where we had the community forum, and every single day, 1,000 people would type chess into the browser, and it would put a .com on it, and it would just go. And then, people would sign up, and then more and more. And then and then eventually, Google Chrome wasn't just putting the .com on there. They would do a search for chess, and we were number one. So then we were capturing all that, and then people would join, and then they'd tell their friends about it. So it was just a very kind of natural growth from search engine optimization and from, the virality of people sharing.
And on the capital side, you mentioned you had some capital from your other business and you used it to start and grow chess.com. For the first 5 years of the business, in fact, you actually tried to raise money and couldn't get any traction from investors. What were some of the investor conversations that were going on behind the scenes, and why were they all saying no?
I met so many great people, and when you're an investor, it's hard to be an angel or VC investor because you have to choose businesses because your hit rate is so low. You have to choose businesses that can do outsized returns. You don't want to 2x, 3x, or even 5x your money. That doesn't help because if you invest in 30 businesses, 27 of them are going to be zeros. So you have to have high returns. And so everyone was looking at chess and just being like, chess is tiny. It's a nothing. It's insignificant. Why are you spending your time on this? And so it just wasn't big enough for anybody. And so, I was like, fine, okay, I'll just fund it myself. Because I could be happy. I was like, well, I can be happy if our company, pays my wages and we can hire a great team and I can live happy on that. I don't need to build $1 billion company to be happy. But if you're a venture investor or an angel investor, you're like, can this company be $1 billion? If not, I don't know that I want to invest because it might not work out and it's not a big enough upside. Now I think chess.com could be a $10 billion company. I never thought it would be as big as it is, but chess is just way more popular and has way more potential than anyone ever thought. I have no idea what the potential is, but we're definitely going to keep going.
I mean, knowing what you know today, if you could, let's say investors were saying yes, would you still bootstrap in the company and fund it yourself, or would you say yes to those investors?
Look, not every founder has an option to do what I did. I had money. I had sold 2 companies. I made money while I was in business school doing other small businesses. I'm scrappy. I've made money. So I had a fair amount of money of my own. And then I plowed that all into the business. So I could bootstrap. And we decided to make money early on and go to revenue soon. I would still have done that, but not everybody had money or has money to put in to start. So taking on investment is fine. Now, that said, you can also do a lot more business now because of the cost of software and running a business and starting something has come down so much. So you can bootstrap. You still can. It's cheaper and faster and easier than ever to start something, even a software business. But when we started, there was nothing, and it was harder and cost more money in some ways. So I just happened to have money. That's the truth.
My dad, when he started his business, he was fired from his corporate job and started an ed tech company. The first few years, though, were pretty stressful because he was taking our family savings to grow the business. Luckily, it all worked out. But you mentioned you plowed some of your money, and you had a family at the time. Was that time stressful for you?
Absolutely. I have been under nonstop stress for 18 years, man. Like, the moment I graduated from business school has been nonstop stress. So yeah, like not taking a job, plowing all of our savings in. Yeah, that was stressful times. But I had already had some successes in the past. And I think my very supportive and trusting wife was like, well, he's done it before. I think he can do it again. So there wasn't stress coming from her. But, you know, I had 4 kids at that point and was, you know, going forward. So it definitely was a little stressful.
You mentioned some of the earlier growth tactics that you used to grow chess.com. One was the domain and SEO. What do you think are probably maybe 1 or 2 of the key inflection points that kind of led it to where it is today?
So being excellent at SEO, being excellent at content. Content was and still is king. Like, that's what people want. People don't want eyeballs. Like, they don't want ads, but they want content. That's where they're putting their eyeballs. And so we knew very early on that instead of investing a ton of money into buying ads, we should invest in content, because that's where people want to be and that's what they want to consume. And then we'll be there. And that has been a through line forever. Don't spend, you know, millions of dollars just buying ads. Spend millions of dollars making content. And that's what we did. But now the channels have changed. You know, it's not articles as much anymore, and people won't read, and it's not long videos as much. Now it's like short form content and creator partnerships and all sorts of things. But it's just content, and we invested in that content, and then the community builds around the content, and you're basically investing in the benefit of the content and the community rather than, frankly, the weird circle of where venture capitalists put money in, businesses then take a lot of that money and just buy ads with it, which goes into the other venture capitalist companies. It's just a weird thing. And no offense to, you know, any of those businesses. And, you know, I know that there's a lot of people who do well using ads, but it just wasn't our strategy. Content and community have always been our strategy. Plus product excellence. Like, there's a lot of people who do different things, but they don't focus on their product. Well, I'm a user of my own product every single day. And so we focused on product, we focused on content and community. And those were our levers for growth.
On that content side, you actually had a different growth strategy for each platform. Why was that, and what were those different growth strategies?
Every audience, every platform is different, and we have different voices. There's different demographics. There's different people. There's different channels. We would test and see what works. Like, we found that, like, happy birthday messages and inspirational quotes work well on Facebook, but no one wants to see that on Instagram. Like, I don't know. Like, and frankly, this is where we hire a bunch of younger, smarter people who have their fingers on the pulse of content to kind of help drive this vision. But, you know, I do remember from the earlier days that there was just like a different touch and a different feel. And so you're constantly experimenting and being like, okay, this does well here, but this doesn't work well over here. So let's just, okay, we're going to do this differently like this. So you have to be very sensitive and realize that you have to really target the message to the channel and to the audience to get there. You can't just say, oh, we're doing content. It's just, you got to dial it in.
One of the most difficult things to solve for is that people will download the app or try it and then not log back in again, or not open back up the the app again, and user retention is pretty difficult to solve for. What are some of the things that you and the team have done to have such high user retention for chess.com?
Well, I wish I could say, oh, I feel awesome about our user retention. I would say I feel we made a great product, but we're still at the beginnings in some ways, I feel like, of really being excellent at that. In fact, we're doing some hiring right now to try to bring some people in who are more experts at this. But we do have a CRM department. We call it CRM, which is basically emails and push notifications. And we have a really fun, creative team that's trying to, have the right notifications. So when the right time happens, it sends you a reminder about chess, etc. So CRM is a big part of our strategy there. We also have tried to make the product more fun and more inviting for all types of players over time. And I would say we've done an okay job, but not an amazing job. And that's part of our future going forward, is like just helping people just a little bit more, have a little more fun, to make it a little easier to get into chess. Because, for example, people who lose their very first chess game, at a much higher rate, they bounce out and don't come back. So we're gonna, try to help with that, where you can play versus a coach and an AI bot that will kind of help you play and win and feel good, and then you can go do it. So we also just tried to have more fun with it. We made crazy bots like Mittens and, all these other kind of fun bots to play against. So, we made Puzzle Rush, which kind of helps you feel good about solving a bunch of puzzles and different things. So we've worked on a product strategy, but we are about to embark on our next phase of just getting better at understanding our funnel and our retention through data, etc. So that's kind of our next phase.
In terms of AI, I'm curious about this one. I mean, do you think in the future, or can you already, I guess, determine whether somebody is playing a human or potentially an AI, especially if it's like trained maybe off of a human? Is that something you might be able to detect? Or
so we do a lot of work in fair play or anti-cheating. We do a lot. We got a lot of people on the team. We work on it. We use a combination of technologies and research and stats and AI and all the different things. If somebody created a program and there's one out there called Maya, it plays at different strengths, etc. If you don't even know how to play chess, but you used like some chess engine like Maya that was like plays like a human, to go from like a 0 chess player to a 1500 chess player, we're not going to know. Like, we're just not going to know. You're playing like 1500 chess player. That's not true. There are ways we might know, but if you're really good at it, we're probably not going to know. But a lot of people leave a lot of fingerprints that they don't know about, so we do know that. But look, at the end of the day, if your chess game looks like a mid-level human player, you're not going to trigger the alarms. But the higher up you go, the more alarm bells and whistles and things we have. And most people aren't like, hey, I'm going to cheat my way into being an average chess player. That's not why they're doing it. So, most of them will, then they want to cheat and they want to get higher and higher. And then, then it just gets easier and easier for us to find it.
You mentioned stress a couple of times during this show so far. I feel like I mentioned a little bit earlier, that the public perception sitting on the outside is when you reach 100 million in revenue or $1 billion in revenue or whatever it might be, is that people on the outside feel like you've made it. You're there. You're at the top. And life must be so much easier. And in some ways that might be true, but in reality, it's still a pretty stressful job. What do you think is most stressful about your job today?
The most stressful thing about my job today is that I want to build a company that's going to be here for 100 years, and that a lot of people can come and work at for a very long time and love it. And it just gets harder when you've got 700 plus people. When there was 7 people, I knew everybody. We'd spent, that's all, there was all of us. When we were 70, okay, now it was, more challenging. I get less time. And, when you're at 700, it's the whole different set of challenges. And I just, a lot of the weight is like, I want to make I have to try to make all those people happy, which I try to do, and everyone, this person's having a baby and this person's father died and this person, is having a mental health, challenge. And this person there's just 700 people to try to make happy there. And then now we have a community of 100 million people who have, who like chess in some way. And we have all the responsibilities of making sure they're having a good time. So I'm just trying to make everybody happy all the time. And that's a very uphill battle. So I'm a bit of a people pleaser. I want everyone to be happy. I want everyone who works at our company to feel like it's the best and only job they ever want. And I want every single person who downloads our app or plays on our website to be like, have a really good time and be happy. And that's hard to do because technology breaks and there's bad people out there who are being abusive and jerks, and there's trying to tear you down. And then there's, people have high expectations. And when you don't, meet every single expectation, they're understandably frustrated. So, I think, we fall short at times. It's impossible to please everybody. And even if we try, letting people down can feel bad.
Do you think that scares you as you grow the business because you have more of those people to manage, more of those types of problems, more users, or is that just not something you think about too much?
No, I think about it all the time. I will say but as we grow and have more resources, we can hire people, and we have hired an amazing team. And so more people can help handle all those issues. So we have a great supportive management team who, tries to, instead of an org chart where like the boss and then, you go down to, we try to do it the opposite. So I'm supporting people and they're supporting people and they're supporting people. And we're all at the top of our org chart as our individual contributors and developers and amazing, content people and support people. So we're supporting everyone. So we have a great support structure. But it's still, a lot of stuff trickles to me. I've been there the longest. I know the most about certain things. And so, a lot of stuff falls down to the bottom where I am to clean up. So it's still very stressful.
Yeah. And before we wrap it up, we have a few closing questions that we like to end with. One is, how did it feel when you reached 100 million in revenue?
I wish I could celebrate more. I'll say that. It's hard to do. Because again, the number doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not motivated by that. I don't care. What I care about is like having a happy team and having users that feel happy. And so to me, I'm not much of a celebrator. And I don't care about money, so frankly, it didn't really mean that much to me.
You mentioned that you don't care too much about money. Why is that? Is that something you can, I guess, more easily say because you have it versus if you didn't have it, you would probably care much more?
Oh, for sure. And I grew up in a home where, we were fine. And so I recognize my privilege there of like, and look, I have money. Like, I have it. And so I could stop working today and I will be fine for the rest of my life. So that's easy. But what I don't understand is people who have the amount of money I have or less or more who are just need even more. Like, it's crazy. I don't understand that. Like, I have more money than a human should have. And yet and so then I'm like, I don't care. Let's just put it out to other people and do those things. But there is something weird about humans where some people it's just not enough and they just want more, and then they see someone who has more and they want to beat that person and they hoard it. And like that, it's not an abundance mentality. It's just a lot about scoreboarding. And I don't know. I don't know why I don't have that. I don't care about it. And I actually think it's kind of a turnoff for me, and is why in some ways I don't love the tech entrepreneurship scene sometimes, because I feel like it's sometimes money driven versus like changing the world or doing something interesting. That also happens, but sometimes I get that like scoreboarding money. We made this valuation. We did this thing. This person made this much money. It's just yucky to me. I don't like it.
I mean, I remember hearing Mark Cuban had a similar thought around it. I think he's worth maybe $4 or $5 billion, and he says like some of his friends or some of the people he knows would consistently try to get more and more money, and they're already worth billions. And he's like, you really don't need more. Like, what are you doing?
I mean, the amount of money someone needs to be comfortably retired for the rest of their lives is so much less than $1 billion. So at that point, I mean, I also just don't understand why more of them aren't doing more good with their money, honestly. And again, I'm not trying to introduce that into your podcast, but like, it's very weird to me. And sometimes the personality traits that can drive somebody to be successful aren't necessarily the personality traits that make them then turn around and want to help other people. Sometimes there are a lot of people who do. There's a lot of people weirdly who don't. And anyway, it's kind of weird.
I guess for our last two questions, if I slid you over a phone and you could call your 18-year-old self, would you call? And if so, what would you say?
You know, I love this question. I really try to live my life without regrets. It's kind of a big policy for me. So, and I also really like my life, so I don't really want to change anything. So if I could go back to my 18-year-old self and send one message, knowing that it wouldn't change who I married and who my friends are and how my companies did, I would have told myself, start exercising regularly and seriously. That's what I would have said to myself. Because that's such a core part of my day and my life now. And I started too late at 30.
I probably would have told myself something similar. Well, not 18-year-old self, but maybe like 12 or 13-year-old self. Definitely was not exercising a lot. Try to do it a little bit more. But yeah, I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you, Erik, for taking the time to join the show. For anyone who's interested, we'll have a link to chess.com in the episode description down below. Go check it out. Give it a shot if you haven't already. And thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.